after addressing deity, starts out with, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for my wife and my family. I'm grateful for generous and caring neighbors, many friends, the ability to work, to laugh, to struggle, to solve problems. While I do have some pains and reduced functions of eyes and ears and joints, I'm grateful for the health that I do have. While I don't have all the money for all the things I may want, I do have enough to live comfortably. There's strife and corruption in the world, yet we live peaceably here in this valley, and I trust those that I work with. My life has had many challenges and setbacks. I've lived in poverty. We've had family members abused. We've lost close loved ones. Yet life is good, and we've been blessed. As we approach Thanksgiving, let us each stop briefly each day and count our blessings. Let us express appreciation to those around us. Let us bring a bit of cheer to those who have heavy hearts and heavy burdens. At this time, I would like to specifically express gratitude to the citizens who make Logan a safe and kind place. Even those who write or call us with complaints or concerns usually thank us for our service. It's really remarkable how most letters end with, "Thank you so much." This is appreciated. I'm grateful for incredible department heads and workers who keep the lights on, have clean water flowing, and the waste removed. Thanks to Rich, yes, even Rich. Teresa, Kimber, Craig, Isa, Paul, Mike, Gary, Brad, and the mayor for intelligent and diligent leadership. Thanks to my fellow council members for thoughtful consideration of each issue and for courtesy even when we disagree. I quote, "Gratitude turns what we have into enough." And to the citizens here, thank you so much for allowing me to serve. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you, Tom. Appreciate your thoughts on gratitude. It's open for a motion to accept the minutes and approve the agenda for tonight.
I will move that we accept the minutes and approve the agenda for this evening.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded for acceptance of minutes and approval of the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they've been accepted. And our next meeting is on December 7th, and our meeting on the 21st has been canceled. So we won't be here on the 21st of December. So next meeting on December 7th, Tuesday. All right, now is the opportunity, if you have questions or comments for the mayor or the council, to address us. And if you would please state your name, where you live. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Now is your opportunity to speak about anything that is not on the agenda for tonight, currently. All right, if there's no takers, let's move on. Mayor and staff reports. Mayor, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to give you a little teaser that we have received some additional donations for the plaza, and I think 2 weeks from now we will be prepared to make the formal announcement with the press release and all the details, but we do have some good news in that department. thought we might be able to announce it tonight. We need to finalize a few more details with the prospective donors, but it's going to be great news. And then item B, we'll have Craig Carlston do, actually, maybe I'll take a point of privilege here if we don't mind. Since we do have Jake Powell here, who is our board appointment that we're asking council to ratify, I'd just like to introduce him. Jake, would you mind standing up? And again, we are nominating Jake to serve on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We have 3 vacancies, and we're still accumulating nominees for the other 2 positions. But given Jake's qualifications, which I'd just like to mention, his professional work through that often includes assisting other communities to plan for, design, and steward recreational resources. In his role as an extension specialist in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning at Utah State University, he says he's involved in not only the pursuit of an academic understanding of recreational and community spaces, but often involved in understanding and influencing the on-the-ground envisioning and inner workings of parks and recreational spaces. And he also has children that have participated in city recreational programs. So I think he will be a great addition to that board, should council choose to ratify that nomination. So I would ask for that, and then you have a chance. If you have any questions for him, he'd certainly be willing to answer that, but you were sent all of his resume and accomplishments, and I think that speaks for itself.
Mayor, I don't know Jake, but I've read the curriculum vitae, and it seems like he's more than qualified. So I move ratification.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of ratification, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great, and we appreciate his willingness to donate his time and energy and attend that committee and help our city continue to improve our parks and trails and those facilities. So thank you very much, and you're of course welcome to slip out whenever you prefer. So with that,
Or you can stay
Or
for
you
the
can
whole,
stay.
stay for the whole meeting.
with that, we will go back to the annual required Open and Public Meetings Training Act, which is very important to make sure we do our business in the public. Everything, of course, is very transparent. We strive to be very careful to obey those laws, and as part of that, we'll have Craig refresh our memory on the rules and bring us up to date.
You all look very excited. So state code does require annual training on the Open Public Meetings Act. We've provided an outline for you. It probably looks familiar to one you received last year. I'll take just a couple of minutes to touch on a couple of things. The intent of the act, I think, is important. This is something that can guide you in your decisions when any situations come up. State code reads, public bodies exist to aid in the conduct of people's business. Public bodies should take their actions openly and conduct their deliberations openly. Definition of a meeting. The convening of a public body with a quorum present, whether in person or by electronic means, for the purpose of discussing, receiving comments from the public about, or acting upon a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power. You cannot use a meeting or a social gathering to circumvent the purpose of the Open and Public Meetings Act. That one, I think, could be a temptation for anybody when they get with somebody in a social setting to discuss business. Just be mindful of that. Skipping down to agendas for meetings, they need to specify with reasonable specificity to notify the public what's going to happen at the public meeting. Items raised during the meeting can be discussed, but it can't be acted upon. Closed meetings. A closed meeting may be held if a quorum is present. The meeting starts out as an open meeting for which proper notice has been given. There's a 2/3 vote of members present to approve the closing of the meeting, and the reasons for the closing of the meeting are entered into the record. And then we also have to keep a record of the closed meeting. And then there's a few reasons why we can go to the closed meeting. If you have any questions about any of these or anything else, you can contact myself or Kimber. We can work through it.
And just for the audience, we're trying out a new sound system tonight. Again, we've had feedback from the public that sometimes it can be difficult to hear. So these new microphones in front of us and at the podium should be picking things up better. If for some reason you can't hear, maybe just raise your hand and then, we'll know if we need to make some adjustments or so on. But we appreciate our staff's work, and that is in direct response to feedback we received from the public to try and make the information more audible, both in person and online, to our public. that's important. Item D on the agenda, I issued a proclamation that Saturday, November 27th is the date for 2021 Small Business Saturday. And as I think we all know, small local businesses are such an important part of our economy, an important part of just our character and who we are. And I would just add that on that same Saturday, the city will be sponsoring the annual Christmas parade with the arrival of Santa. That publicity material will be going out, I think maybe today or tomorrow. We will be doing some of the same things we did 2 years ago. Last year it was canceled because of COVID, but it's on Center Street. So come down to Center Street, the parade will, which will bring Santa in a horse-drawn carriage. It will start on 200 West and come up to Center Street to the Archway. We will have some music. The lighting, the Christmas tree lighting will be a little later than we did the first time. We learned we needed to wait until it was a little darker, so there will be some entertainment and music and food trucks and some activities in between. The different small businesses on that street will have items that they'll be giving out and, of course, selling. There will be some activity. Kids can see Santa in the Utah Theater. What else am I forgetting, Mark? Caroling. So there should be a lot of fun things for the movie. There will be a free movie by the Utah Theater at 7:30 after Santa's in the lobby. So lots of fun things for families to enjoy and a great way to come downtown and support our small businesses both on Center Street and elsewhere downtown. Again, we're doing a great job, I think, at revitalizing our downtown. So with that, my report is completed.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom?
Mark, I received a notice from a friend of mine who saw an article in USA Today, nuclear power plant backed by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, set for construction in Kemmer, Wyoming, $4 billion, 345 megawatt project. And I thought we might be interested in that where somebody else is trying to hold that.
Well, again, we've always said with the carbon-free power project, the problem is we thought it should be done by venture capitalists. It shouldn't be done by cities taking that risk. So if there's nuclear power that's, reasonably priced that comes online, we will take a look at it, but because it'll be carbon-free, but
It's not.
it'll be a long time before they get it built too. So once it's built and operating, we can evaluate it that way. We'll look at it.
Okay. Let's move on to our council business. Vice Chair Simmons, you have an update for us for the Planning Commission.
Well, the Planning Commission hasn't met since the 28th of October, so their meeting will be on Thursday. So that's a big update.
Thank you for that extensive update.
And with your permission, I will talk about the joint city council and planning commission
Please,
workshop.
yes, would you please?
I have been working with a group. Zach Covington has done most of the heavy lifting on it. He works with the Bear River Association of Governments, and he has done some research, and we've worked with people throughout the state, and various people in the city have been participating in the planning to evaluate whether our current ordinances are adequate with respect to wetland, floodplain, and riparian protection along the Logan River. So this meeting next, or on the 30th, will be a presentation of what Zach has come up with. He has quite a long presentation. There will also be some people online from throughout the state that have implemented more restrictive ordinances with respect to riparian and wetlands than perhaps we have on the books at the present time. We're doing it with the Planning Commission and Logan's and the council so that everybody can have the information at one time and we don't have to do it twice, because should there be any changes done to our ordinances, it would be initiated by the Planning Commission and then come to us. So,
And this is a public meeting,
Yes.
so anyone can attend. Now, because it is over the lunch hour, because of all these folks and their schedules, are we providing lunch for our group? So if you are coming, please feel free to bring a brown bag, bring something, so you can also have your lunch as you're listening, but.
Right. But it's very informative. Zach has done an amazing job. And I think that anyone who's interested in wetland protection, riparian protection, might be interested in at least participating in the slides. Zach may also offer it online so that you could call in, because some of the people who will be participating will be off-site. So,
Thank you. Make sure you get that on your calendar, everyone, for the 30th. So it's coming up. All right, as I mentioned earlier, our council meeting on the 21st of December has been canceled. And let's move on to our action items. We have a public hearing for budget adjustment and bridge. Resolution 21-56, please.
Few items to consider. The first is a $10,000 grant, state asset forfeiture grant the police department received for equipment. Request to appropriate $210,000 of reserves in our EMS fund for an ambulance. A $1,200 grant the library received for Wi-Fi hotspots. And lastly, a request to appropriate $850,000 of environmental health reserves for purchase of a new grinder.
Schrader.
That
Well, because of all those branches that came down in the storm, the grinder that the environmental department has is 14 years old, and we just have so much quantity that we did have some money in environmental reserves, although we've learned that it may take 6 months or more to get the equipment, but that will help us long-term deal with this situation. And
I understand that the grinder that we have is, you use it for 2 days, and then it's in the shop for 5 days, and then you use it for 2 days, and it's in the shop for 5 days. Because if it grinds anything that's not a tree branch, it stops grinding.
So I was down there on Friday, and I got lost in the maze. I mean, that is huge. With this new grinder, are we gonna?
we'll still be grinding for a year or something. He's going to address that. It's going to take us a long time to get through the stockpile branches. Plus, like I say, we don't think we can get this piece of equipment all that quickly.
Can we get 2 of them?
We don't have 1.6.
One second. Issa, I would like to put the first branch through.
Oh, I don't know, you may have to stand in line.
Well, that's-
He is on the forest, he is on the
I'm on the
forestry
forestry
board,
board, too,
so
so-
he may qualify for that.
We'll have to have some training first.
You may have to stand in line. There might be some
Ah,
employees
sure.
that are really anxious.
I think I contributed more trees
Than anybody else, you think so? I don't know. Should have seen the pile at my house. So. Okay, anything else, Rich? No.
No. I was just gonna say, I'll say it later, never mind.
Okay, any other questions for Rich? I'm open for a motion on.
Right, have a public hearing.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Public hearing, thank you for the reminder. It is a public hearing, so let's open this up for comment. Please state your name, where you live, try and keep it to 3 minutes or less if possible.
I'm Brian O'Hara, I live in Logan. And I just wanted to ask just 2 simple questions. One is, does an ambulance really cost $210,000 for one? Okay. And is it the bigger one or the shorter one?
I think they're like 100, and there's equipment as well. Does this include both?
There's a gurney, which is about 25,000.
So you have to come up here and talk in the microphone.
I'll say it for you. There's a gurney that's 25,000 and some other equipment.
Yeah.
So it's a fully staffed ambulance, okay. And then this tree branch grinder, does it really cost $850,000 for one?
Unfortunately, it costs possibly more.
Yes,
It's
More
a
than
lot.
that?
it's huge.
Okay, I believe that's
It's not when you pull behind the truck.
Oh, so it's not one of those? Oh, it's the one that just sits at the landfill and grinds everything up? Okay, well, I just thought those were hefty amounts, so.
Expenditures, yes, we believe that they are hefty expenditures,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, they are necessary.
It's needed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments and questions.
And I also received another email asking kind of the same question. Is that grinder really cost $850,000? So it's not It's a common question, all I had as well.
Yeah, we were sort of like, oh, 85,000 maybe, just add extra.
If there's any other comments on resolution 21-56, let's bring it back to council for action.
I move we approve resolution 21-56.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion or comment, other than Mark gets the first chance to use the chamber? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, resolution passes. Move on to our next public hearing, resolution 21-54, and Mike, you do not look like a man.
No, you beat me tonight.
All right,
Kids, so.
darn it.
Mike's loose.
Whatever you would like to share with us, you did cover this in workshop last time.
Yeah, this is just our annual CABR report. It's the consolidated annual performance evaluation report. And really what we do is report on last year's CBG project or program. We received just under $510,000 in CBG funds for 2020. And then what we do is invest in low to moderate income neighborhoods or other kind of support facilities. So I won't go through the whole program again with you, but she covered it last time. That's just kind of a recap. So any questions I'd like to get answered?
Any questions from Mike? I was trying to get that one project is 112% complete. And above and beyond, to complete that one, so.
Sort of. It's what we fund with CBG is what we fund with other, or whatever the source of
Give
funding.
a little extra time. No other questions from Mike? It is a public hearing. If you'd like to comment on resolution 21-54, now is your opportunity. Again, state your name, where you live, and 3 minutes or less.
I do know who I am, Gary, Dr. Gary Yost. I live in Logan. I'm just wondering what kind of evaluations are made, what kind of questions are asked. And you don't have to go into the big long thing, I'm just wondering how it's performed,
How?
the CABR.
Well, it's an evaluation of the activities that we've done, so we've measured the success based on what the project application was for. So if we said we're gonna build 600 million feet of sidewalk in this neighborhood, we do that, then it's 100% successful. And we also base it on who's served by it, so for example, we realigned an intersection, project cost is $52,000 for this project, so that benefits 5,395 residents, so that's part of the evaluation criteria.
Okay, thank you.
There are no other comments. Let's bring it back to council for action.
I will move we approve resolution 21-54. Sorry, I can't read with my glasses.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor of resolution 21-54, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. You're up for the next one, Mike. A continuation of ordinance 21-22 from November 2nd.
Okay. Urban agricultural chickens. This is ordinance 21-22, and I sent you a memo that summarized all the changes. I'll go through those real briefly. The direction I got from council at the last meeting was basically utilize that AEU approach to define how many animals are appropriate per lot. So basically correlate the lot size, how many animals you can get. Clarify the reference to our accessory buildings so that people understand the setbacks, if it's over a certain size. Prohibited livestock over 250 pounds. Didn't change any BTP. And we tied the grandfathering date to when we adopted as to how it refers back to how we regulate livestock and manage their operation. So you did ask for a graphic, and we worked on it a little bit, got distracted. Let me just show you visually.
Could we get this turned on?
I don't think it
So the grandfather just goes back to 19 then, so
Yeah.
May 19.
So we just had to pick a date when it was defensible, and so if you had
And
animals,
they
that's that
said they
date.
hadn't followed that.
Oh,
Okay.
So, Mike, could I ask a question, just, why did you choose 250 pounds?
That seemed to be kind of a range where it's a threshold. When I looked at the AEU information, that was kind of one of those thresholds of, up to this point, is certain types of livestock. Beyond that, then you start jumping into bigger stuff like cattle and horses and donkeys and things like that.
So if you have a baby one, you can keep it, or do you need to say something about livestock that can grow to 250 pounds?
Yeah, so, I would assume if you have an animal, a juvenile or a baby animal, it's a baby, calf, the mom would be there as well, so in theory, you couldn't have a calf there, or a cow there, so you couldn't have a calf there.
Okay.
So a pygmy goat's not gonna have a baby pygmy goat's gonna get to 250 pounds,
Right.
or a regular sheep or a regular goat, so it's implicit in the way it's written is that, you're not gonna have a horse unless you're grandfather. But we would treat an animal that had an offspring, once it's weaned, it counts as a regular count. So if you had a baby, if you were grandfathered for cows, and they were bred, and you had calves, and they would, once they're weaned, they would be qualified or classified.
Like, I guess more I'm asking the question, like, the 4-H kid who wants to raise a cow, and so they start with the calf.
We don't have any provisions in here for 4-H kids to do that, so if it's gonna be an animal that starts out at, 200 pounds and so they grow 1,000 pounds, and according to what we've written, you couldn't do that.
Okay, thank you.
So just a couple of graphics to help explain, there were some questions about the setbacks and where we measure setbacks. So we started with a graphic, the rest of this just kind of shows you, if you've got a chicken coop in the back, the idea is you've got to be at least 25 feet from adjoining residential structures. Here's what it looks like in the real world, just taking a standard neighborhood block up in Hillcrest. And this, I don't know what this is, it looks like a shed. People typically put these back in the back corner anyway, so just, you put that back there. This radius shows you how far 25 feet is. It's too close to this house and this house, so you couldn't put that chicken coop in that location. You'd have to move it somewhere else. Does that make sense? So you can try to slide it.
Setback includes your own house then?
No, not really,
Okay,
just
just an
join.
example. Okay, got it.
And so here's another neighborhood up there in Hillcrest. These are bigger lots, 13,000 square feet. So again, this is just a representation of a chicken coop. This is a 25-foot line drawn around it. So in this case, you wouldn't be okay. You're 50 feet from this house, 70 from this house, 100 from this house, 100 from that house. So this would be okay. The question that's been raised is the way the setback is written, it's from the adjoining structure, adjoining residential dwelling. It doesn't take into consideration, you've got yard space there. So if my kids are out there jumping or trampoline, and this guy's got a bunch of chickens and stuff, then yeah, in theory they can smell them, and that's kind of the issue. But we've got to draw a line somewhere in the sand,
it does preclude that neighbor from doing a modification or expansion on their house. I mean, it's measured to that neighbor's house.
That's right.
So now if he wanted to put a porch or a breeze, whatever it is, on that house, now that chicken coop is not conforming.
The legally existing.
Yeah, sort of. Legally existing non-conforming, it's legal at the time it's been installed, and we would recognize that at that point in time. If you put it in at this date, we measure, you measure, we all agree that you've met the minimum setbacks, but then the neighbor comes in and builds an addition. It creates a situation for you that's really not what you're doing. You still recognize that chicken coop's allowed to be there.
Don't we have regulations with respect to fencing? Did we
Yeah, it's gotta be in a fenced yard, so it's gotta be to the rear of the side of a home, but it's gotta be a fence charge.
Okay. So you're essentially, you're not, nobody's gonna be jumping out of trampoline and the chickens are right there. There'll be a fence between the chickens and,
Or birds will fly, yes, that's the idea.
well, I know, but the chicken coop, I should
The
say.
idea is, you know, this is back on use it as a property owner to keep whatever you have on your property, not let it,
Right.
legal whatever it is on your property.
Right.
That's why we have a fence requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Could it just be rear yard,
Well, yeah,
It's just a little slice that generally would never happen anyway because you're 8 or 10 feet across the side.
yeah, yes and no. So in this neighborhood, I agree with that. In other neighborhoods, in some of the central or core parts of town that have bigger lots, and you do see animals on the side of homes. It just depends on the nuance. When we originally crafted the language, we just had a rear yard, and people said, no, what else side of it? Run my cattle over there, my goats, whatever the case may be. But they had enough room that it was. So we just said, look, as long as from the side or the back of the house, we were okay with that. And that's the direction government went. Right, it's a law, yeah. And the reason we have the separation is to minimize the nuisance effects of having animals, odor and noise. And with the larger animals, it's a larger setback, so it's 50 feet.
Larger animals, meaning
Sheep.
Sheep,
a
goats,
sheep or
miniature stuff, yes. I did reach out and ask them a question about livestock, to make sure we're all on the same page about, what the threshold was, and what do we include in that category. Was it just the miniature stuff, there's the stuff with the pets, or does it include like the goat or the sheep, and those fall under that weight threshold? Just one more, well, a couple of little just things we point out real fast. I had an attorney question my math today. So,
Whatever that was.
just on 20, I put in 6 examples to kind of show if you have a lot size of this, represents this. One of the mathematical elements isn't right in the very first example, so we'll change that. And then another clarification is, under the general provisions for chickens and small animals, so 1737 B1, it says residential zones, and really, the way this is written is this, you can have chickens, fowl, or small animals in conjunction with a single family dwelling on a residential lot. This has a reference to residential zoning, just to take out that reference.
Because there are some residential
Yeah, we have.
lots in commercial zones.
That's correct.
Now, just a ticky-tack question, I suppose, but with ADU, that doesn't turn it into a multifamily. That's still a single family.
Yeah,
Owner occupied building, it's not.
What is,
But there's 2 dwelling units.
but yes, it still retains its rights as a single family dwelling, it just has an accessory dwelling unit that we recognize associated with it. So it's
Just
not,
wanted to clarify, for Craig's sake.
any questions?
Well, Mike, I will say I appreciate the fact that you could wade through all of our conversation 2 weeks ago and come up with something cohesive. So I appreciate that.
Any other questions for Mike? He did a great job picking our comments and our thoughts and input that we've had from so many people. And we've got over 100 emails from everyone. We've tried to implement a lot of the suggestions from our citizens in this.
But they all thanked us.
And the letters were they were very good, yeah. And there were some great thoughts and some really great suggestions as well too. So we really have tried hard to put this into it.
Well, I know some people have wanted us to do this neighborhood by neighborhood, and I find that that's just very, very difficult for us to regulate, and extremely difficult for the city to be able to regulate, I guess is the right word, because And our neighborhoods are, they're a little fluid. Right now, they're defined by school district boundaries, but is that really what a neighborhood is? We've had that discussion before. And the interesting thing to me is that I am closer to the Wilson School than I am to the Adams School, but I'm in the Adams neighborhood. So you have to know what neighborhood you live in, then you would have to know, that your guy across the street might have different requirements than you would have because he's in a different neighborhood, and
It'd be like the state districting committee trying to figure it out.
yeah, it would just be too difficult. So we're hoping that what we have come up with is both fair and codified, so that if we have issues, we have the ability to enforce the code. And we put in the grandfathering so that everyone, we got some people that didn't want us to have a 20-year grandfathering or anything like that. So we were able to pick a date. That is only 2 years ago. So if you've had livestock for the past 2 years, and you can show us that you have had them continuously for that time period, you get to keep what you have. And it doesn't mean you can expand it, unless of course you live on a lot that would allow you to expand it. But it doesn't make you, we had people who were upset because they would have to give away some of their livestock or their birds, and we didn't want that to be a part of this ordinance, but we did want it to be clear, because new people are always moving in and they want to know what the rules are. And when you can't say distinctly and succinctly what those rules are, it makes it a lot more difficult to, for Mike and his team to be able to say, well, we don't know, you can't do that. So and I know that urban chickens are a big deal, so I know people want them.
Mike, could you clarify, community agriculture, do you envision that as people buying a lot and sharing the work and production, or do you see it as someone having a lot and multiple people going in on it? Or could it be that?
Well, it could be that we've got a few community-supported agricultural spots in Example. We've got one at the refugee that's kind of managed by that group that they use for their refugees coming here. So the idea was just to recognize that on some of those bigger blocks, the internal parts are used as community gardens. And in some cases, you'll see, in the fall, you'll see some folks selling pumpkins in the corner, or tomatoes, or whatever else. So we don't want to regulate it, but just recognize that stuff does happen.
I could buy a half-acre lot on 300 South and put up a greenhouse.
Okay.
Is it commercial or is it personal? If it's a greenhouse, I could feed my family with that.
Yeah, let's put some goats and
Could also
cows.
sell a lot of plants out there. So. Good question. Any other questions for Mike?
I'll move the approved ordinance 21-22. As amended, changed, and refined.
I'll second
Seconded by Councilwoman
it. Don't have,
Anderson.
don't have COVID.
And she has been tested multiple times for COVID, but she's taking precautions to keep us all cold-free. So it's been moved.
She went on that trip,
Yeah.
and then she
We
said,
have no sympathy for Councilwoman Anderson.
No longer, no
No.
longer.
Okay, any further discussion amongst the council? I think Planning Commission did a great job. I've talked to a couple of members of Planning Commission. I told them how much we appreciate the work that we did. They were in no way offended that we have adjusted things. They were wishing that they had seen the AEUs sooner, and so I'm very appreciative of that, Mike. I think you've done a great job of trying to find a balance between those in our community that do not want this and those that really want more. Yeah, so.
or they want some.
Or we want some, yeah, and so it's a hard.
Yeah, I'm reading the letter, please don't do this. Next letters, please do.
And let's have more, you know, it's like, it's a really hard dilemma. Because we've had great input from both sides.
Yes, yeah.
It's really good input.
So quick question, the comment of the 4-H kid wanting to raise an animal, what is the option for somebody like that?
Well, if they want to do an animal inside Logan city limits, you have to, meet one of those weight standards, they can do a sheep or a goat. If they want to do a hog or a cow or a horse, or something, they can do that outside of the, or do it in an area where they go to grandfather things.
The property is big enough that it was grandfathered. My neighbor has 2 horses, 3 horses right now, so. Well, he's got 8 acres. They have sufficient properties for it.
They can have more now.
More, that's right.
If we pass this, they can't have more.
It has been moved and seconded for ordinance 21-22. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, ordinance passes. Continuation of ordinance 21-16. We're gonna- From, who knows how long ago, this has been a while. The Logan rezone is what we like to call this, and that's,
Chairman Anderson, this is a rezone request from Bradley Hogan. It was heard by the Planning Commission on August 26th, and then workshop with the council in September. It has been continued a couple times since then. The request is for a rezone from NR6 to MR12. And it's located at the intersection of 1800 South and 1600 West. It's about 6.5 acres. The Planning Commission sent a recommendation of denial to the council. They voted 7-0 or unanimously. They also received an application for a design review for townhomes. They tabled that application and wanted to hear the rezone outcome first, so that has been tabled. At the Planning Commission meeting, there were approximately 15 to 20 people in the crowd at the public hearing. 8 people got up and spoke. 2, I believe, were in favor, and 6 were opposed. The Planning Commission did receive a number of written comments as well before the meeting, and the majority of those were in opposition. Real quick, so, since it's been 2.5 months, let me give you a quick refresher here. This is the site here, so it's the southeast corner of the intersection of 1800 South and 1600 West. It's kind of an L-shaped property. There's kind of some unique circumstances. There's a couple open water ponds there on the left-hand side. It's relatively flat. It's been used as agricultural lands for the last several years. Here's a picture of the pond. This is 1600 West, which is...
and that's NR6 where the homes are.
It's actually MR9, and I'll get to that in just a second. So 1600 West is country road, pretty narrow. It's recently been paved through there. And then this is in the Rose Hill subdivision, looking west through the 6-acre property. So here's the current zoning. It's NR6. So the area to the east, which is Rose Hill, is MR9. Also to the south is MR9. Both of those properties are single-family detached, and they're old defunct PUDs. So pre-2008, pre-Great Recession, they were approved under a PUD ordinance that the city had on the books at the time. In 2011, the city amended the code, does not allow PUDs anymore, mainly because of the street problems we were having with PUDs, inadequate streets and so on.
Define PUD.
Sorry, planned unit development. It's an option for some projects to maybe cluster, do smaller lots in one area in exchange for some open space. It's a good concept, especially in sensitive areas, but again, the city struggled with the street standards, with some of the layouts. And so now we do not have PUD. So needless to say, when those projects came back to life post-recession, they had expired, they needed to be reapproved, and so they were rezoned to MR9 just to finish what they were originally approved for. And so that's the circumstance with Rose Hill and Meadow Creek down.
Both of them were started, isn't that correct?
Yes, they were, Rose Hill was more than halfway finished.
So that, it's not because we were trying to give them what they had before as much as it was we were trying to be consistent with what was already on the ground.
Correct. We were allowing them to finish
Right.
what they were originally approved for. So those are the two areas to the east, and then you go farther east, you hit some more NR6. As you go along the 10th West corridor there, you have some commercial, you have ICON, there's some industrial zoning as you go towards that corridor. This is the proposal to go to MR12. This is the FLUP, so this is general plan. DR, which is the yellow, stands for detached residential. In other words, it's the NR6. The red star is the property there. You have MR to the east, and then again, commercial industrial along the 10th West corridor. Out here, RRA simply means rural reserve, and then there's the hatch means further research, or there's probably sensitive land, so you need to kind of take a more detailed look when you go to rezone those areas. They're currently outside of the city. Okay. The Woodruff neighborhood plan is the most recent planning effort that we've conducted in this area. A couple of years ago, we looked at kind of three sections of Woodruff. We have the highway corridor, we have the historic core up there by Willow Park, and then West Woodruff is that kind of growth potential. Some of it's in the city, most of it is not in the city at this point. So several public hearings out of the Woodruff Elementary School. That concluded with a new FLUP recommendation. And so this big arrow points to that property which remains DR, but it pushed out into this new area and recommended NR6 and then NR4 here. And really the theme for this exercise was what we call the transect. So as you get into a high corridor, a commercial corridor, as you go outward, you kind of decrease density, decrease heights and things like that. So this effort resulted in a recommendation for single family detached. So again, this is the site. This was the design review layout that they showed. So the continuation of the street, townhomes aligning these new streets, and then a connection up here on 1800. This was the townhome design submitted. Again, that has been tabled pending the outcome of this rezone request. Any questions of me?
What about the water, the ponds, are they wetlands?
Delineation hasn't been conducted, but what I'm hearing is they're not wetlands, they're irrigation.
There was one,
It's spring, yes, it's spring water.
Yeah, there's this,
So it's water rights, it's irrigation. There are downstream users that utilize that. So
right, I was gonna refer to
you
that.
can't, you can't, dam those up or plug them off. You have to continue to flow water to the downstream users. So,
Well, the proponent wants to build over those ponds, so how would you do that?
so if this were approved, then you would have to pipe and capture the springs and pipe it to the downstream users. Get an engineer to figure it out.
That's a good answer.
There you go. Any other questions for Russ?
Would there have to be is there a requirement for any delineation?
Yes, if there are wetlands found, then they do have to delineate them through the Army Corps process, which could result in if they try to delineate them off-site, it's much more difficult because it's a ratio of 2 to 1 or 4 to 1, so you have to acquire quite a bit more land. The preference is to leave them alone, don't touch them, or mitigate them on-site.
Thank you.
And the notes from the planning commission, it kind of sounds like they were feeling like there was enough higher density housing already, and it should stay at NR9, or NR6, because of the flood and because of expansion, so.
That was kind of the theme of the comments is they didn't feel like this particular area was appropriate for higher density.
Any questions? We good? All right, this is a public hearing. If you would like to speak to us about ordinance 21-16, now is your opportunity. Please state your name and where you live, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And speak clearly into the microphone.
Council, appreciate taking the time to listen to this this evening. My name is Kent Logan. I'm a brother of Brad Logan, part of the project. As Russ indicated about a month ago, the planning and zoning did deny this project as far as the rezone for the NY at 12. And even though we feel like it would make a great project for NR 12 with townhomes, and these would be townhomes that would be occupied not for rent, but actually be sold to as single families. We just wanted to indicate that we felt like since there's NR 12 within 1,000 feet to the north of us, NR 9 just adjacent to the south of us, that this would be an appropriate zoning for this piece of property. The other thing we feel like, we're living in a day and age when affordability is everything to these young families, and there's just not available. And without getting higher density, it's hard to get anything that's affordable. The other thing is we live in the second most arid state in the United States, and we're also, it looks like we're going to be in a drought for a long, long time. And we think it just makes sense to have smaller lots. And whether it's townhomes or whether it's like the homes just to the south, the MR9, where these homes are single family homes, single units detached, and we're open to that. We would love to maybe have some feedback. We've spent over $50,000 to get to this point, and we hate to spend another $50,000 just to keep coming in and making proposals and then get denied. So we would love some feedback from the council, or if they would be open to NR9, which is to the south. Those homes to the south, even though the lots are smaller, even those homes are selling between $350,000 and $400,000, which a few years ago we would have thought that was just crazy. But and you wonder how these young families can afford to get into a home. So we think that the townhomes would have been good. But if the council feels the same way as the planning and zoning, we would at least love some feedback. Would you consider MR9, where we could do something similar to what's been done to the south of us, and we wouldn't have a high density, but at least a little more density. I realize, I grew up in an era like so many of you, my whole weekends doing yard work and working around the yard. But this younger generation, where both the husband and wife has to work, they just don't want to spend their weekend doing yard work. If they have some free time, they want to be able to get into the mountains or head out on the road somewhere and to get away, because life is just so stressful with both husband and wife working. So if you feel the same as the planning zoning and reject the MR12, we would at least love some feedback. Would you consider MR9? Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. If there's no more comments, let's bring it back to the council for discussion, action.
We did get a letter that Teresa forwarded to us, and was everybody get a chance to see that with 5 minutes to 5 today, so, and other people had a chance to look at that. That was in opposition to the second.
So Russ, to be very clear, the MR9 only exists because the developer was building single-family houses, and they were just doing them on smaller lots because of prior zoning.
Yes, I believe that was the primary reason why that MR9 was adopted, was to finish those PUD projects.
And they did a deed restriction that said that they were only going to build single-family, is that correct?
They did, they placed a voluntary deed restriction on themselves, saying we're just gonna finish the project and we're only gonna do detached, single family. Even though MR9 does allow townhomes and other attached types of structures.
Right. So there were a lot of mitigating things that happened with respect to that MR9. It was an anomaly, not a normalcy. Let's put it that way.
I'll weigh in on it a little bit. I don't feel like I can support this, and I'll tell you the reason is if I had either me or my children in the single families to the east of there, there's a high expectation that based on the flood and so forth, that there's going to be detached housing in this parcel. And I think that in a sense it's kind of a betrayal to those individuals who had this expectation. So I struggle with that. I know we're short on affordable housing. We're also short on single family homes. We're short on everything. I don't think I'd be afraid of having a slightly higher density, but you'd have to work it out on that. That's my feeling on
And I would echo the Woodruff plan too, which had all of that community input into it as well.
For single family.
And I know that in the planning commission, there was, and I don't know, because I was there, I didn't read it carefully as I might, but I know that one of the concerns was the fact that the families who purchased to the east of this particular property have a community park that they all participate in. And they were very concerned that that park would be overrun by a higher density just next door, because it is actually the only park around. So they did that, express that concern. So Russ, just for my, just because I'll ask, should we feel that MR9 with a detached residential would be appropriate? What would be the process? Would it go back to planning commission, or would we, I would not, personally, I'm not willing to do that without some sort of voluntary deed restriction that would say that I'm only gonna build single family houses. But I don't know how we would go about, whether the process should be that it would go back to planning commission or what.
Yeah, that would be appropriate. It's been noticed as MR12. The neighborhood has seen MR12, they've seen the townhome design. They have not seen anything MR9 at all, and so they haven't had a chance to react or comment. And so that would be the appropriate way. And whether it's, to take action on this and then have them reapply and start over, or continue this and start over. It's probably cleaner to have them just reapply with a new application.
Come on, you're frowning. You're supposed to say yes.
Yeah, I agree with Russ, that maybe you go through the process again, I think they probably should just resubmit a new application.
So this one should be, if we were not in favor of the 12, we should deny this, and then they have the opportunity to do whatever.
Correct.
Okay. And I will say for myself that I think if they were to mirror what is to the east, that would be an acceptable compromise, but it would have to be a voluntary deed restriction, which would be only detached residential on smaller
I
lots.
think that would fit in nicely. I think Kent makes some good suggestions that we do need detached homes in smaller lots for more
Well,
people.
We need single-family homes as much as
Yeah.
we need them more than we need MR 12.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it taught everybody they needed a little bit of yard.
Yeah, everybody needs a little bit of yard, yeah. Any comments? Open for a motion.
So I would move that we deny ordinance 21-16.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded for ordinance 21-16 for denial. All those in favor of denial, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. Hopefully that gave you some feedback.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Have a nice evening.
thanks for coming, gentlemen. We appreciate your efforts. Okay, let's move on to our workshop items. Resolution 21-52. Wastewater management. Cameron.
Rick wasn't for the people chosen.
You're gonna be with us a long time, you better not try.
Oh, yes. Amy, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here. Get feeling better. You are absolutely serious. No one can carry you. Are you sure?
She's the most quiet that she's ever been.
You're about to miss a thrilling 5 minutes.
She will also do her homework and watch the rest of the online.
The other problem, Mayor, is we need that big park going over there, so they don't have to worry about another park.
Right, although it's 200 south, 1800 south. But it's
That's
close,
relatively
it's on the
close.
west side.
Yeah, I would, if I lived there, that's where I would go. So.
Woo-hoo! Sounds great.
Okay, as a water purveyor, we are required by state and federal requirements to maintain a water conservation plan. And that includes updating it, going through a formal upgrade process every 5 years. And this just happens to be the lucky year that it's due. I want to point out that this has nothing to do really with this previous summer's extreme drought. This is just lucky, I guess. But I am happy to answer any questions that you might have, how our system did this last summer. But otherwise, my focus is on the water conservation plan, which the plan itself, as required by the state and federal requirements, focuses on not so much like public outreach and conservation, but rather system operation, efficiencies, and minimizing system losses. So just to give you an idea of what this plan kind of entails, this first chart, and I apologize for you having to turn around, I was expecting the big screen to be working, but this chart is in the plan. The top blue line represents the amount of water that we have collected and produced through the spring of the canyon and our deep wells. And just to point out the gallons, that is in the billions on the left side of this chart. There's a significant amount of water. And the green line is the water that's been billed through the meters for businesses and for residential homes. So as you can see, over the years, we've tightened up that gap, and that credit doesn't go entirely to us. Things such as more efficient toilets and so forth helped close that gap. But that's kind of the goal there as a system, is to increase efficiency so that we can continue to close that gap.
So that's not water general, or that's not the total amount of water, that's the water you delivered?
Correct.
Thank you. Because I was like, oh, those lines are coming together, that's not good.
Yeah, obviously, if we end up crossing rivers and, well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. That's, if you're selling more than you're producing, I guess, well, there's something not right.
But we are producing more than that, are we?
More delivery.
Correct.
Okay.
We're producing more than what we're billing for.
But the gap is diminishing,
Correct.
and we have a population that's gonna double.
Correct.
We're producing, we actually have,
This doesn't mean there's less water, it just means we're delivering less water.
well, it must mean there is less water, because where did we put
We're
the rest?
not using it.
There's been a lot of, there's been
Yeah,
some
a lot of
conservation.
Where are we putting the rest?
Great question, man. So a lot of that comes from water leaks in the system. It comes from regular system maintenance that we can't avoid, such as we're required to maintain our tanks, to drain them from time to time, do maintenance and inspections on them. And so that water, we try to minimize that as much as possible, but it happens. When we have a significant main break, we can lose 250,000 gallons of water within minutes before we can respond. So a lot of that happens, as well as dead end flushing, fire hydrant maintenance are required to flush each fire hydrant typically twice a year, and that's a lot of water. So
Okay, just as long as we have more than we need.
well, I'm happy to. Yeah, and I apologize that that was misleading, and the water delivered, really should probably say the water, let's see, what would be the right word? The water pumps, collected, produced, that was the word I was looking for, water produced.
So,
And we are going to be building a new water storage tank to store some of our water.
But if we're, okay, I'm still a little confused, I'm sorry. I promise.
Can I give you an example? So this was before my time in the water department, but many years ago, we have our main pipeline for our main supplies is the spring at Logan Canyon. It had an existing 24-inch water line that came down the canyon out to the city. It was old, it was leaking, it was estimated that we were losing about, I think the report said 2.3 million gallons per day in that pipeline. So that would be counted in water that we produced, as in we collected from the spring to bring to the city, but was lost.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a significant portion of this here. Now, years ago, the city made an investment and replaced about half of that water line, the worst part of it, and now eliminated those losses. So, again, it wasn't that we were running out of water, we were simply making the system, we're plugging up the leaks, and so we're not having to produce as much to meet the demands.
what about pumps
Okay.
that are drilled but not pumping, not producing? Don't we have some pumps that are literally not producing?
We do. So our main source again is the spring, and that covers almost our entire winter needs. Like right now, we're not really using any wells, but during the peak summer months with all the irrigation that's going on, we have 4 deep wells that we will use to supplement the spring flow to meet the demands.
Are they used all summer?
They're used typically from June, July into August. And just to give you an idea, just this last summer was pretty much the worst conditions that we've seen, at least in recent history of the drought. We got up to about 75% of our production capacity, so we did pretty well. We're pretty fortunate to have the water sources that we have here. I don't feel like I answered your question based on your expression.
Well, I always have somewhat of a swirly expression, but I had heard that we're not even using several sources. Now, maybe I'm wrong, or I didn't understand it.
So yes, going back to the 4 wells, we never used all 4 at the same time. If we were in that situation, that means they're now at 100% capacity, which is bad. There's no redundancy now. So you'd like to have at least one well, at least one that can keep on standby. So yes, it is true that we're not necessarily using all of them all the time, but that's a good thing.
So to make I mean, obviously these lines converge. What yours?
Well, technically, it shouldn't ever converge. I mean, we shouldn't be billing for more water than we're producing, right? So at some point, that's gonna
Maybe there's
plateau.
another line.
That's gonna plateau out.
But there's gonna be a graph line that says water needed, water needed. Now, maybe you cut back, maybe you, I don't want to say auction, what's the word? You mandate that people don't use certain amount. I mean, there's all kinds of strategies. But in order to change the curve, it's gonna take some years for people's behavior to change, or for our ground cover to be redone, all kinds of things.
Sure. And so there's a lot that has to happen there to encourage that, to make a point where people start to willingly do that, or whether that's through resolutions or utility rate increases or.
But this conservation plan is not how do you save water on your own personal lawn.
Correct.
This is a conservation plan for the entire system itself.
This is what me as a water department can do internally with my operations
To
to
make,
conserve water.
okay.
Because I look at this graph and I see from 2010 to 20, that gap is almost exact all the way across. That means somebody's doing something. It wouldn't just naturally hit that way. I mean, you're monitoring this very closely. So.
Correct.
So there's another factor in here, and that's the Crockett project.
Yes, there's a very large initiative that has good momentum that the city is participating in. It's the Crockett, I believe the latest, it's the Crockett pressurized secondary irrigation system. And that basically is to convert all the open canals throughout the city, and it's a multi-city effort to create a truly pressurized secondary irrigation system, and that would have large impacts on our culinary system.
You're talking about Crockett Well.
Well, no, what I'm talking about is that if we convert people within that zone, the west side of Logan, from culinary water to secondary water, you've now saved the pumped water.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
But that's not a done deal.
No, it's still.
No, I'm saying it's an option.
And it's only, it hasn't even been chosen as a preferred alternative for the grant,
Correct.
so.
So,
That's a long ways out.
I just want to make that really clear.
have you or somebody calculated what that savings in switching from culinary to secondary water would be to this graph?
We haven't gone into anything real detailed about how that would exactly affect us.
Because it depends on the service area.
I'll make one comment on that if I can. It would not affect this graph, other than both lines would move down together. Because this graph is showing the difference between the water we put into the system and then the water that goes to the water meter. In other words, at the head of the system, we put in 100 gallons. When it gets to your house and goes through, and we bill for all the water, we only bill for 90 gallons. So somewhere we lost.
Yeah, there's another.
We're trying to fix and minimize the
We want
impact.
that. We want that
We
gap.
want them to be.
We want those lines to get
If
close.
people water their lawn less, we will put in less water and build less water, so both of those move down. The gap between the two of lost water will likely stay the same, if nothing else changes. Our goal is to reduce the lost water.
Okay.
So up here, you close that gap considerably
Correct,
in 2010. We'd like to get that gap even closer.
correct. And we're getting down to where it's now the easy, low-hanging fruit, we've been picking
Picked
up.
it. Yeah,
Now we're getting to the harder things that have a smaller impact than we do.
Okay, so what I was talking about is water that is quote needed versus water that's available.
Correct, and the needed water would probably be the billed water, if you wanted that on this graph. We're not showing that, the converging lines is a good thing in this case. And we're not showing that we're running out of water, we're showing we're taking better care of it.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
Did
you.
that help?
That helped a lot. it doesn't look like all shiny.
I
This
apologize.
is a 5 minute thing that's taking an hour.
I'm an engineer by training, so I'm not very eloquent or
You
articulate.
explained very well, you just have some people that need a little extra time to like.
Whoa.
I'm included in that group, so it took,
The extra time.
it took us a minute to figure it out, but we got it, so that's what's important.
Okay, well, this one's only got one line here, so let's.
We have a break.
So this is the Logan City, this is gallons per capita per day, which means how much water on average each citizen in Logan uses per day.
It's going up in the drought.
Okay? Well, and we can discuss it if you'd like, but back in 2006, as you can see, it was just over 300 gallons per person per day. And that's not, obviously that's very high, but it's not uncommon across the nation. And over the years, it has dropped again. It's some stuff that we have done, which I'll get into in the next slide here. It's also things, like I said, more efficient appliances and so forth that people have done on their own. So you have a question back, and I.
Well, we address it, but on this one, is this based on the water billed or the water delivered?
Water billed. Actually, I'm sorry, this is both. This is water that, again, that we produce.
This is produced, correct?
This is produced. So this would include our losses as well.
We're becoming more efficient.
So when we fix a leak, it also improves.
And just to put this into perspective, the state of Utah has a goal statewide for water purveyors to get this number down to 240 or less GBCD by 2050. We are well below that and have been for a while. So everybody should give themselves a pat on the back on that one. We're doing very well.
But our water bill went down significantly during the drought. I mean, correct, our citizens responded to our request to cut back. My understanding is looking at the water, what was billed and the water revenue, I mean, people did cut back.
If we put 21 on there, that's gonna be lower.
Correct.
And this is probably 19 to 20.
Correct.
That's the year we had so much water, we didn't know what to do with it.
Correct.
2000.
We're doing, I mean, seriously.
We're
That's when we were afraid that we were gonna have to pull the sandbags out because there's so much water coming down Logan Canyon at once. So it's like everybody used more water because we just had a lot.
You go on.
Okay, I'm 2 minutes into this, right?
Yes.
So we're doing well.
We only have 3 minutes left.
So again, to focus on things that we as a water system can do internally to narrow that gap, we have obviously pipeline replacement. We try to, it's always a balance of where you put your money, right? But as far as funding will allow, we have heat maps that we keep track of where all our leaks are and how bad those leaks when the mains blow up, and we actively try to go and replace these worst lines to minimize these water losses. Back in 2014, we implemented multi-pressure zone system to bring down the pressures as you head west across the valley to much more manageable, more reasonable pressures, which also helps to greatly reduce water losses. Just an idea, I don't believe we lost really any billing, but in 2014, the first year we had these pressure zones initiated, our water consumption or water production through those zones went down by 17% within just that first year. And our water leaks dropped, our main breaks dropped by 40% within that first year, and that has continued on. So that, again, the pressure zones have helped greatly to reduce water loss. Full system automation, that was before my time, before they had our SCADA systems and tank level sensors. Back in the day, the old timers would go and they'd watch the tanks, they'd open the hatch and say, well, we're a little low, they'd drive up the canyon and they'd open that valve a little more. And then when they come back and then a few days later, they see that tank overflowing, they go up and they turn it back down a little bit. So there's a lot of losses there. Now, it has been for some time, but we're always updating it and continuing improving it and have a fully automated system that senses the tank levels and opens and closes our collection line from the spring and fires the wells and modulates based on actual real-time demand so that we're not oversupplying water, if that would make sense. We've also had, we've been pretty aggressive in upgrading our meters. There's actual meters going to businesses and homes and so forth, to replace old ones. A water meter will never fail and record more water than went through it. If they fail, it's always that they stop recording and that water is just freely going through and not being recorded. So we've been actively replacing those, as well as the technology on those have been improving quite a bit to be more accurate. And then, as the state recommends, as the number one way to encourage water conservation is our culinary rate structure, our utility bills. As it's not rocket science, the more expensive something is, the less likely you are to overuse it or abuse it. And we've been able to do that a few years ago. We had a fairly significant rate increase, and I'm sure that is going to help encourage conservation as well.
Well, we implemented tiered rate structures,
Correct.
so
Okay.
that was.
So I've taken about 5 minutes, so if you have any questions.
So I do have one question.
Okay.
How will the conservation plan, what will be reflected in the conservation plan when we have to replace all the lines under Main Street? When we do that project? Will that, I mean, are we having leaks there,
We do.
or is that just an upgrade that we will do because they're tearing the road apart?
It's both. So some of our oldest lines are under Main Street, especially in the historic area.
Okay.
And we do have leaks regularly, and those are always difficult because when you go back to try to patch a line that's been in the ground for 100 years, it's difficult to know where to stop and how to stop. And so it would, I don't know that you would see on that graph, it's not our worst area in the city
Okay.
for leaks,
Okay,
but surely it would help close that gap.
it's not a low hanging fruit,
Correct.
even though it's a very expensive.
That's a great way to put it. That's definitely not low-hanging fruit.
It's a very expensive fruit. Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Cameron? Thank you for your detailed description.
And put it up with us.
Yes. We finally got it. We got it. Lisa, will you share ordinance 21-23 and 55 with us? Since you have two.
Sorry, so we made you sit a long time, so
No
we
problem.
talked about water.
I thought the water was very interesting.
I did too.
Very interesting.
You want to discuss the ordinance first, or the plastic waste management?
Plastic waste management first.
That's the better. Then you can.
As you see fit. Yes.
I'd rather see the county thing.
I don't think you want to plug it in.
I'd like to see.
Was that?
He's not plugging his computer.
Underneath county one thing.
Oh, you got help coming.
I'm not for the bank thing, I'm for the county one thing.
And that's what.
Okay. I can't hear anyways.
Are you hearing any better, friends?
I think so.
Okay, what I want to share with you is the plastic waste management to replace your existing ordinance. And this management plan came to light after you have approved the ordinance. And it was developed in consultation with the county health department. And of course, you've also received some input from the mayor of Richmond and also the county executive that came and talked to the city a few times, and as well as the solid waste advisory board had a discussion about these several times, and then the request was to do more public education, and eventually COVID came and we sheltered it, and here we are now that we feel that it's about time to approve this management plan. But it's up to you how we feel about it, and I'll explain to you the elements of the management plan and what we're proposing here. So this is a good example, right on this main picture of what plastic bag in a container that is delivered to us is when it's not controlled. And there's a significant amount of plastic here that during collection as well as while it's being transported from where the can is to our facilities, and then when we process it in our facility and take it into North Valley, it can all be affected by wind and other factors and can be released into the air. As well as when we're handling it at the landfill. I'll show you some pictures of that. So the reason we want to have a management program for plastic waste is because the state and the federal government both require that we prohibit littering around the landfill. So we need to contain litter, basically to not to allow to go into the neighboring places. Plastic litter is also on site in landscape in the community when we're collecting our waste if it's released into the air. Plastic litter prevention prevents us from being a good neighbor. You've seen that 3 years ago, our neighbor in Idaho complaining about that, how that is going to be. It's also very expensive. I'll show you some pictures, some of the things we do to contain this. It is a significant contamination to our recycling program when it gets in the recycling program. And there isn't a lot of viable recycling options as well. But there are some. So this is a good example of challenge to the landfill. These are fences we built around the landfill. These are 30 feet high in the air, and we still get plastic. So this is a good example of a fence we put at the landfill. These are other smaller fences we move around. Every day we take these fences, put it in the area where the wind is blowing so that it will touch. These are fences we bought, and we have a lot of them in the landfill north Valley. This is another picture showing these fences. And right, you can see where the compactor is right now, right there. So it's next to it. See, this is the compactor. The waste is right there, and the fences are there to protect wind blowing from this side to this side. This is south, this is north. This is again the landfill. You can see the blue bags in this area on our fence. This was before we built those fences. This is our recycling contamination. This is material came back from Allsop's mountain fiber and iron after they have sorted through. This is a material they rejected. Of course, it was with the recycling material, and we brought it back into the transfer station. So, what is being done to draw the program we're proposing to you is we've had community assessment with bag distribution, where it's coming from, who's using, and that sort of things. Emily and a group of students have visited several retail stores to make an assessment how many plastic bags are being used per person. It's about 2.5 per person. Who's short?
Per day?
Yes.
Per day.
Say,
2.5 per person per day.
So plastic waste education campaign, we've also enacted 2019, and we continue to do that in different places, teaching people that to use paper containers rather than plastic, and they do plastic to make sure that it is not loose in the garbage. At least some people will tell you that we use it as a garbage bag. I think it's better than putting it in your garbage if you use it that way. So we met with manufacturing, big businesses like Taco, Cosmo, Schreiber's, that all also produce a lot of plastic in their process. And also we met with retailers. They showed up at our meetings, we had lunch for them, we talked with them. And they expressed it that they want to have, and you will see here, I forgot to have this. This is the plan. They expressed it that they want to have a, even ground where they can all operate and have the same policy for all the stores as well as community. So that's one thing they ask, whether they charge it or ban it or however we do it, they just want to have the same policy. So our objective in developing this program is to minimize plastic waste nuisance. In other words, that's our goal. Not to some people think that we want to regulate plastics, we want to do this to plastics. No. Our intent is just to do what we do the best we can to minimize plastic litter in our community. That's our goal. And we want to meet state and federal requirements, meet community expectations. So we will do whatever we do in the cleanest possible way we can do. I'm sure everyone will be unhappy if we, in the process of picking up your garbage, there's a windy day and drop a lot of your plastic in front of your house. That's something our citizens don't expect us to do. And we want to be good neighbors as well to the community, whether we operate on this landfill or transfer station or in, Clarkson area. Make plastic waste management simple and easy to comply. So if we come up with a program, we want that program to be simple and easy to comply to our citizens as well as to the businesses. Make it also customer friendly and make it business friendly as well. So what we are proposing is this pre-consumer plastic reduction requirement. This is where if you go to places like Dawson or Shriners, they receive a lot of plastics in their process, shrink wrap on pallets they have, or cheese or other things products that will ship to them. When they remove that plastic, what are they going to do with it? I'll show you a picture later on, a good example of how to handle that. And it came to us, I don't know what business it came from, but I have a feeling that it's one of our factories here in town. So all we're asking them is to bag that or contain it so that it is being tied together. It won't be so easy to be blown by air and it goes everywhere. So they can just put it in another plastic bag and tie it, or tie them together and ship it that way to us. Basically containers. Businesses can bundle bags sufficiently to 40 speed, deposited in the garbage and send it to us. This is a good example. You can see there's tons of plastic in these containers. And this business took the responsibility of containing them and said, we have no problem with something like this. Can easily be landfilled without any problem. So we don't want to give the loose one if we want to do. That's what we're asking manufacturing businesses to do. When it comes to retailers, we would like to see that they eliminate the free single-use bag they give out, or implement an improved recycling program, such as we have seen some small compactors that businesses can buy to put it in their business. So they can ask their citizens, you're paying 10 cents, but if you bring it back, you pay the 10 cents back. And we'll recycle. Put it in this compactor and ship it. Or if they have contract with another company that recycles that product, that they will ship it to. So there are some other options businesses can do, and Kroger's have done some of that. Smith's Marketplace and other places, they can do that. Option 2 is basically not to worry about any of that, just charge 10 cents fee per bag, and they keep their 10 cents. we're not interested. It's just an option for them to engage that or the ability to offer plastic bag. So this is all we're asking in this process, these two options. Pre-consumer and post-consumer or retail program. That's all I have. And in short, you have that in the 3-page program I give you. Now, if you're satisfied with this and you like it, you can consider repealing your ordinance. And I strongly advise that if you incline.
So this is intended to replace the ordinance that we passed in the
Yes.
past before.
Yes. So there is also a enforcement section of this plastic bag that you will see also in the program I handed out to you, that we already have $17.50 fee in our fee schedule, that if we receive waste that is not well contained, we can charge it. For example, if you bring to us sludge that is wet and we have to dry it before we can put it in the landfill, or you have brought to us a contaminated soil that doesn't meet our levels, that we will have to set aside, aerated, all of those are fees we charge $17.50. So if you bring plastic that is loose,
Like
and
this.
yes, or more, we have the ability to charge them $17.50 because we would have to pick up these when it's small.
It's called a special handling fee
Special handling.
in the,
Yes.
in the contract. So, yeah.
Just make sure, this is countywide,
We want to be, yes.
and the
We're
county,
implementing countywide. The fee's already been approved. We use it for other products, including, animal byproducts we receive from some businesses. We just want to include plastic into that.
And he says, talk to the county, he is attempting to get on the county council agenda so he can go have this plastic management discussion plan with the county council members to see if they are willing to adopt it as well.
So, just because we adopted it doesn't mean that it doesn't have anything to do with the county.
That's my understanding, correct?
As a matter of fact, I only want your support. You don't have to adopt it.
well, I was always in support of this. I didn't like the individual Logan City mandate. I didn't feel like that was,
Because you've already approved the fee, it's in the fee schedule, the county approved it also. And this will be something that the department can implement if you support it.
so there's different types. I do some shopping at the grocery store, and there's the bags you put the carrots in, and then there's the bags you put all the stuff in, and then you get the bags at the pharmacy, and then you get, there's all kinds of different plastic things. And so, how do you differentiate?
There is the separation in terms of its thickness and weight,
Okay.
and your ordinance had that distinction. In this case, we're considering all thin plastic the same. They cause problems for us, not only plastic.
So, just to clarify, we don't adopt this, or do we adopt?
We want you to support it.
Okay, so we need to say, we need to have a vote to say yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I will go forward and implement it. I
And,
don't want to do something that you're against.
Okay.
That's the intent here.
but in conjunction with that would be, technically replaces the single bag ban that we passed a while ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well,
So, Jeannie, we need to repeal that other ordinance
Right,
and then pass a resolution supporting this program.
Okay.
we may have passed, we never enacted it.
It was to go into effect January 1.
Okay.
So if you don't do anything to repeal it,
Yeah, all
and
right.
again, it's just been contentious among retailers with the county and so on. So we're hoping that the county may also agree to get on board with plastic management plans.
Can we just let it sunset?
There was no sunset on it.
You already passed it, so you have to repeal it. Are you talking about the ordinance?
You're talking about.
And that's why we have both of them workshop tonight. So,
And we like the county consensus because it's county.
It's a county issue.
It's a county
It
issue.
doesn't stop at Main Street or whatever. So at least, he referred to recycling these bags, and I always thought that was a problem. You're saying that if we get the right volume, then it can be recycled?
Collection is the biggest problem. If people can bring it to you and bundle it and ship it, there are some companies that use some of these plastics to produce another product, decking material and things like that. But
you can never get them to even respond to you, right? I mean, and the quantity is so much. I mean, where do you store that physical mass of plastic bags to get to the tonnage before they'll even consider it? And they wouldn't even talk to us about tracking the details.
But they would be interested if they can get something from Walmart or Kroger, that is a big company, and they may work with it. They're not interested in Logan City. But some of these businesses may be able to persuade them and get something with them. Now, on the other hand, these businesses can just bundle them or tie them together, compact it, and send it to us also. It's fine. We just want it to be handled properly. Now, one thing your support is also important to this is that because of the 10 cents we're asking businesses, they can use your support as a leverage for them to say that, yeah, we are not supposed to give you free, we want to charge you 10 cents, if they choose to go that way.
But they could also just pay the, either bundle it or pay the $17.50 a ton special handling fee, so they have options.
Yeah.
It's not a mandate if you choose to repeal the ordinance, and so maybe you should just go quickly over that. You went to item C to talk about the management plan, which made sense because that's what we're trying to replace it with. So now, you want to just briefly mention the ordinance?
So the ordinance prohibits and single-use bags. And this, our problem is bigger than the single use. It's wider than that. And you have also authorized it for Logan City and it doesn't reach county line. It creates a problem between communities that, for example, Logan adopted and we handle the waste for the whole county. What we do if we go to Providence or Smithfield or North Logan, another Walmart, one in Logan, how do we handle that kind of thing? So we've always wondered if this would be a difficult thing to implement for us. So in this case, I think this will do what we want to be done, and it's worthwhile replacing that one and enacting this one.
So you want the support to go to the county, Cache County Plastic Waste Management Program. And then, once you get the support from various communities, or not?
If you approve, as I said, there's nothing I can do right now with this plan already. But since this has become an issue that politically and socially a lot of people are involved in, I want you to have the opportunity to participate in this process. And of course, the county council as well. I have no plans of going to specific communities, but if requested, I'm more than happy to go to their councils and present to them.
How do you want to do this? Thumbs?
Well, no, this is a workshop.
Oh, that's a
workshop.
All right.
They'll come back in 2 weeks.
Okay, any other questions for Lisa?
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for your presentation and for your efforts to make our community cleaner. Okay. Rich, resolution 21-57.
Two items to consider. First, a request to appropriate $6,999 for a JAG grant for police equipment the police department received. And the second is a request to appropriate reserves. One have reserves of $599,744 for an employee retention stipend. It's estimated to be $1,000 per full-time employee and $500 per part-time year-round employee, prorated for the time amount that they've been with the city. And the purpose is to try to retain the employees that we have. Very difficult job environment. We're having difficulty attracting, just like everybody else is. But our goal is somewhat shifting from that to simply trying to keep what we've got and hold them until the new fiscal year when we can try to allocate the best we can for wages and those other things that will hopefully compete. We don't really compete based on wage. We never have. But we've at least got to make it somewhat respectable, otherwise we do lose our place.
This is a problem that everyone is dealing with right now, trying to keep employees. And it's
fun to work here.
That's what we tell them.
And also as we approach, going into the budget discussions for the next fiscal year, we know we need to look at permanent raises as part of that whole package to retain employees as well. So this is a stopgap measure because of the incredible market we're in, but a way to say thank you, stick with us, we'll continue to work on, permanent raises as appropriate.
I reached out to some of our distributors that we work with that are similar in size and revenue, and they all are doing similar things. We've all raised starting wages, we've all tried different incentive programs to try and keep our employees happy. One thing that we have done is we've done kind of a retroactive raise, performance-based. We'll give you an extra $2 per hour for all the hours that you work, but then you have some requirements to go interview with your supervisor, some goals to reach, and that has worked really quite well for us.
So this will be somewhat similar because it's prorated based on the time you've been here, assuming people are high performers, which most of what we have left is. So, one thing that maybe the public and others don't realize is in government, it's very hard to react to these market forces. Because we set a budget at the beginning of the year, we allocate what we have available. Well, that doesn't leave much for reaction to market forces such as what we're experiencing right now. So instead, we appropriate one-time reserves as a stopgap measure that hopefully shows enough appreciation that employees want to stick with us, and hopefully they enjoy what they're doing, and we compete on other ways that maybe the private sector can't. Just trying to make it a good place to work. It's the best that we can do, unfortunately.
I don't think it's a good idea. It's one you have to do.
That's how we feel. We feel it's necessary, and we're concerned.
Every business in our sector, this is what we're all doing.
And it is public service, whether it's you and I or our employees. I mean, we are providing a really amazing service to the public in so many ways that affects their quality of life. And hopefully our employees enjoy being part of that team that does that.
Any other questions for Rich?
Have we lost a lot of employees in the last 6 months?
In certain areas, we have lost some, and we have been able to hire some. However, anything that relates to construction in any way, shape, or form, we've had great difficulty in attracting them back. Now, what we're doing here really doesn't do anything to attract new employees. We're hoping what it will do is just keep what we've got. We have water department, and they spoke earlier, we have water department positions that are open right now that we have not been able to fill. We've advertised multiple times, so we're trying to do a couple things within our power to try to get us to July 1, but July 1 is when we're hoping to solve some of those problems, increase some of those pay scales that have been negatively affected. But at the end of the day, I think we keep talking as departments, the same. We've never competed based on wage. You know, we can't fall so far behind that people are leaving, but we've never really been the market leader on wages, and we never will be. But we've got to at least be within the conversation, otherwise I don't blame them for not working here.
I'm just gonna bail. And I see so many people just leave a job for an extra $1 an hour. When
They
there's a
do.
lot of other benefits that equal more than that. So,
So people are leaving jobs anyway. That's the problem.
We do have retirees, and they're impossible to replace. There just aren't the workers that replace them. But surprisingly, our pool is much smaller, but we're still finding good people most of the time. But that's getting harder and harder. All the advertisements you hear locally about offering incentives and various starting wages, although I hear that doesn't apply to everyone, that's like best case scenario. It still has a psychological effect on employees, so we are concerned. We think this will also have a psychological effect, we hope, have a psychological effect, and our employees will appreciate, because most of them do have great jobs, and it is a great environment to work for the city. That we accept that we'll try to be as competitive as we can on wage.
okay, thank you. Are there any other considerations for tonight from the council?
Not for me.
All right, if that is the case, thank you all for being here, and we'll adjourn our council meeting for tonight. Yes, and we'll reconvene, or convene, yes, you're right.
Kurt was getting a little nervous back there in the backseat. He was like, thought I had to do something.
Okay. Resolution 21-58, RDA.
Workshop,
Do you want me to speak to it?
Yeah.
So it's a request to appropriate $700,000 of RDA reserves toward the City Hall parking lot improvements. This is in conjunction with the library project that's going on, separate but in conjunction. The library is going to reconfigure that parking lot to the east, the City Hall parking lot to the west. It does necessitate something to be done there. We have planned on this for several years, and to a certain extent, when we sold the property to the hotel, the second north and main corner, we knew that some improvements were going to have to be made because it did impact the existing parking that we had. So this is a request to appropriate $700,000 of downtown RDA reserves, the majority of which were generated because of the project where we sold the land. So it is correlated. Our hope is that this will do it. It was a little shocking to us that the estimate is so high. However, we're hoping that we can make the project clean and it will enhance the library project as well.
And part of when you do it, then you have to do stormwater and, you know, again, just do some of the infrastructure that doesn't currently exist. But while we're doing it, it just seems to make sense to get everything done. We also did have an option, the landscape architects that designed it, totally redoing all of City Hall Plaza, like the cement on the buildings, clear up to the buildings, both the entrance to the police department and to the entrance to City Hall here. Again, that would have necessitated totally redoing the storm drain system that we had under police, and we just said, no, that portion of the plaza is fine, we can leave those planters, I mean, that was another $600,000, it seems like. So we've taken what we think is a middle road, not doing every little thing, but we really need to address that parking.
And we may have some minor adjustments as well, just moving a few things here and there, but we'll do that over time.
So does that increase the number of stalls at all, or? what?
Yes, significantly. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we'll take out this little this little brick wall out to the south that is just not really used for much, and we take off, I mean, we lose a little bit of the plaza. But again, we will significantly increase our, like, 44 more spaces or something, Karen, is that about right?
Right.
So, about 44 spaces, if I recall, without looking at the plan in front of me.
But that's both parking lots, right? Isn't that the one on the side and the one
Yes.
last?
Yes, that's correct.
So, and but the library has a parking requirement and we're meeting and exceeding that parking requirement, so.
Correct.
And this renovation will help us achieve that.
Great, thank you, Rich.
Thanks for being there.
Karen and Kirk,
Yeah.
volume was good, you're able to hear okay, other than Amy? Yeah, Karen says thumbs up, yeah.
Much better.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Actually, I can hear you talking, everybody talking.
Yeah. Our meeting is adjourned, thank you all. Here, I have a solution for including we're going to open the borders and let 2 months immediately. And we're going to make a supplement drop like 50 cents, we realize that they don't have any money, and then they'll come back to work. Give me a month and I will fix the entire thing.
That could be good.
Just like